Clashes broke out on Friday between Israeli authorities and Palestinian protesters at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, a holy site on the Temple Mount, Jerusalem. Violence has spread throughout the week, wounding hundreds of Palestinians and several Israeli police as Muslims mark the holy month of Ramadan. Supporters of the militant Hamas group marched through Gaza, raising fears of further escalation. The Biden administration is urging both sides to lower tensions, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told VOA.
We continue to call on all sides to exercise restraint, avoid provocative actions and rhetoric, and preserve the historic status quo of the Haram al-Sharif Temple Mount.
Earlier this week, Israelis responded to Palestinian militants' rocket attacks with airstrikes, the biggest escalation since an 11-day war between Israel and Hamas last May. The Biden administration has held ongoing talks with Middle East partners and is still considering a White House meeting between senior Israeli and Palestinian officials as conditions permit, a National Security Council spokesperson told VOA. However, with the heightened focus on the war in Ukraine and other priorities, including pandemic recovery, it's unlikely the Biden administration will push for a restart of peace negotiations at this time.
Given that there's a split between Fatah and Hamas, the Palestinian factions, given the Israeli government in a fragile political situation, they want to just be able to lay out some markers and achieve things that are practical rather than overpromise and pretend like there's some sort of grand new sort of era of peace in the Middle East.
That's a shift from the Trump administration, which pushed the Abraham Accords, normalization agreements between Israel and several of its Arab neighbors they said would lead to Middle East peace, despite leaving Palestinians out of talks. Senior State Department officials are currently traveling to Israel, the West Bank, Jordan, and Egypt.
While there, they will engage with senior officials to discuss reducing tensions and ending the cycle of violence in Israel and the West Bank and Gaza. Acting Assistant Secretary Limpert will be accompanied for the entire trip by Das Hadi Amr.
But with political deadlock among Palestinian leadership and Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's coalition government under threat of collapse, there's not much the U.S. can do as the violence continues. Patsy, Widakuswara, VOA News, Washington.